You see a gate manager, red-faced, pointing a finger. You hear him shout, "You are not getting on this plane!" The target? A black woman standing alone, her expression unreadable. This wasn't just a rude employee. This was Mark Thompson, a man drunk on his tiny sliver of power. And the woman he was screaming at? He thought she was just another passenger he could bully. He had no idea he was committing career suicide. He had no idea he was yelling at Dr. Evelyn Reed, the brand new, unseen executive vice president for his entire airline. His day of reckoning was here, and it was just getting started. The air in Chicago O'Hare's Terminal 5 was thick with a familiar, stagnant anxiety. It was the smell of stale coffee, jet fuel, and thousands of simmering frustrations packed into a glass and steel tube. For Dr. Evelyn Reed, it was a symphony of data. She sat in one of the hard, bolted-down chairs at gate C-28, her worn leather carry-on at her feet, and simply listened. She heard the stressed mother trying to quiet a toddler, the finance bros loudly complaining about the delay, and the mechanical, endlessly looping apology for the operational delays plaguing Transatlantic Airlines Flight 88 to London Heathrow. Evelyn blended in perfectly. She wore simple black trousers, a gray cashmere sweater, and flat shoes. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun. No first-class lounge, no porter, no visible sign that she was, as of 72 hours ago, the single most powerful person in charge of global customer experience for the very airline whose uncomfortable seat she was currently occupying. Her official start date wasn't for another week. This trip, flying coach unannounced, was her own idea. Her PhD wasn't in business. It was in organizational psychology. She knew that to fix a broken system, you couldn't just read the reports. The reports were sanitized, filtered by VPs and directors who wanted to protect their own bonuses. To find the rot, you had to stand in it. She'd spent 15 years turning around customer service divisions at hotel chains and tech companies. Transatlantic Airlines, TAA, was the big one, the Leviathan. TAA's new CEO, Richard Sterling, had hired her with a simple, brutal mandate. "Evelyn, our reputation is in the gutter. We're a laughingstock of memes and angry travel blogs. Fix it, whatever it takes." This flight was her first whatever it takes. Her ticket was simple. E. Reed, coach, middle seat, booked through a third-party travel site to ensure it didn't get flagged internally. She wanted the real experience. And O'Hare, on a rainy Tuesday with rolling delays, was serving it up on a cold platter. She watched the gate agents. There were three. Two of them, a younger man and an older woman, looked exhausted but were moving with a practiced, if weary, efficiency. Then there was the third. He was the supervisor, the one with the slightly different colored tie. His name tag, which she had to squint to read, said Mark. He wasn't just stressed. He was vibrating with a sour, coiled energy. He snapped at his colleagues. He barked at a passenger who asked a simple question about a connection. "Sir, if you'd listened to the announcement, you'd know we have no new information." He'd shot at an elderly man. Evelyn made a mental note. Gate C-28. Manager, Mark. Poor inter-team communication. Aggressive posture toward passengers. This was exactly the kind of data she'd come for. After another 40-minute delay, the pre-boarding announcement finally crackled to life. Families with small children and passengers needing extra assistance began to shuffle forward. Then, Group 1, our first class and Apex-level flyers. Finally, we now invite Group 4 to board. Evelyn stood, stretching her legs, and joined the queue. She moved forward, handing her passport and phone, with the digital boarding pass, to the younger agent. The agent, David, scanned it. Beep, boop, bloop. A harsh, negative sound. He frowned. "Ma'am, just 1 second. He scanned it again. Beep, boop, bloop. He typed her name into his console. He shook his head. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Your reservation isn't coming up as confirmed. It looks like it was voided." Evelyn kept her expression neutral. "That's strange. I have the confirmation email and I checked in this morning. Here's the confirmation code." "I see that," David said, his own frustration growing, but not at her, at the system. "But the system is gospel and it says you're not on this flight. It looks like your seat was reassigned due to an equipment change. and the system auto-canceled your ticket when it couldn't find a new seat. A computer glitch then, Evelyn said calmly. Can you please reissue the ticket? I'm sure there's a solution. David, what's the holdup? The voice was sharp, grating. Mark, the manager, pushed his way over, shoving David aside from the console. We're already late. We need to get these people on the plane. Sorry, Mark, David said, stepping back. This passenger's ticket was auto-canceled. I'm trying to find her a seat. Mark let out an exaggerated theatrical sigh. He looked at Evelyn, his eyes flicking up and down once, taking in her simple clothes, her dark skin, her lack of designer luggage. It was a look of instant, dismissive judgment. Ma'am, he said, not as a term of respect, but as a weapon. The flight is full. Overbooked, in fact. If the system says you're not on it, you're not on it. You'll have to go back to the customer service desk in the main concourse. The main concourse. A 30-minute walk and a security line away. The flight would be long gone. I understand there's a problem, sir, Evelyn said, her voice dropping into a polite professional cadence. But I have a confirmed ticket and I checked in. This is an error on transatlantic side. I just need you to honor the ticket. Mark laughed, a short, ugly bark. You need me? You don't need anything. I'm telling you what the situation is. The flight is full. You're not on it. You need to step aside. He pointed to the side of the podium. Now! Evelyn didn't move. I'm not stepping aside, sir. I'm a confirmed passenger, and you have a duty of care to get me on this flight, or at the very least, book me on the next one from this gate. I'm not leaving the boarding area. Mark's face, already ruddy from stress, began to turn a shade of deep crimson. He had been challenged, publicly, by her. You're not listening, he hissed, jabbing a finger at her. The flight is full. There are no seats. What part of that do you not understand? The line behind her was growing. People were sighing, checking their watches. The David agent was looking at his shoes, desperate to be anywhere else. The part I don't understand, Evelyn said, her voice remaining level, is why you are being so hostile. I'm a customer. Your system made a mistake. I'm asking you, as the manager, to fix it. This was the final straw for Mark Thompson. She hadn't just challenged him. She defined his job for him. He saw the passengers watching, some with their phones half raised. He felt the hot flush of humiliation and rage, and he decided to make her the problem. He leaned in, his voice rising from a hiss to a full-blown, public yell that silenced the entire gate area. Ma'am, I am done talking to you. You are holding up my entire flight. Your ticket is invalid. You were probably trying to scam a flight you didn't pay for. You are not getting on this plane. He punctuated his sentence by snatching the printout of her confirmation from her hand, and in a move of pure spiteful theater, Mark Thompson ripped it into 4 pieces and threw them onto the floor at her feet. Now get out of my line, he bellowed. The gate fell into a stunned, horrified silence. The only sound was the hum of the ventilation and the distant, muffled announcements from the terminal. Evelyn Reed looked down at the pieces of her ticket on the dirty airport carpet. Then slowly, she looked back up at Mark. She didn't look angry. She didn't look scared. She just looked interested. And for the first time, a tiny worm of doubt began to twist in Mark's stomach. But it was too late. The show was on. The silence at gate C-28 stretched for an agonizing 10 seconds. Every passenger in the queue was frozen. The toddler who had been crying was now staring, wide-eyed. David, the younger agent, looked like he was about to be physically sick. Mark Thompson, breathing heavily from his outburst, felt a surge of adrenaline. He'd done it. He'd put her in her place. He'd won. He pointed a trembling finger toward the concourse. Go. Back to ticketing. Now. Or I'll call security. Evelyn hadn't moved a muscle. She remained perfectly still, her gaze locked on his. When she finally spoke, her voice was so quiet it was terrifying. It cut through the tension like a surgeon's scalpel. Call them, she said. Mark's bravado faltered. What? What did you say? I said, call security, Mr. Thompson, Evelyn repeated, her eyes flicking down to his name tag and then back to his face. I would very much like to have this conversation recorded by airport authorities. Please go ahead. She wasn't crying. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't backing down. This complete lack of the expected, terrified submission threw Mark completely off balance. He had been expecting her to burst into tears or scurry away in humiliation. This calm defiance, this was not in his script. You're disrupting boarding, he sputtered, trying to regain his footing. You're interfering with a flight crew. No, you are disrupting boarding, Mr. Thompson, Evelyn said, her voice rising just enough to be clear, but not enough to be a shout. You are the one who yelled. You are the one who destroyed a passenger's travel documents. You are the one who, in the last 2 minutes, has violated at least 4 TAA customer conduct policies. I, on the other hand, am a ticketed passenger asking for a resolution to your airline's system error. A man in the front of the line wearing a business suit cleared his throat. Sir, she's got a point. You were way out of line. We all saw it. A few more people murmured in agreement. The crowd was turning on him. The phones that had been half hidden were now out, openly recording. Mark saw the red dots of recording lights and panic began to claw at his throat. He was losing control. All of you, mind your own business, he snapped at the passengers. He turned back to Evelyn, his face a mask of rage. He was trapped, and he was going to lash out at the person who had trapped him. I don't know who you think you are, he spat, his voice low and venomous. You come in here with your cheap ticket, probably bought with some voucher, thinking you can just demand things. People like you always try to pull this. You think the rules don't apply to you. You think you can just make a scene and get a free upgrade. The microaggression hung in the air, thick and toxic. People like you, Evelyn's expression tightened. The data gathering part of her mission was over. The executive was starting to wake up. People like me? She asked, her voice dangerously soft. Please, elaborate, Mr. Thompson. What kind of people am I? You know exactly what I mean, he sneered. Now, for the last time, get out of the line. I will not, Evelyn stated. I will stand right here until you either find me a seat on this aircraft, as my ticket guarantees, or until your security officers arrive. The choice is yours, but this flight is not boarding another passenger until my situation is resolved. It was a power play, a gamble. She was betting that his fear of the delay, a delay he was now solely responsible for, was greater than his pride. She was right. Mark looked at the queue, at the flashing delayed sign, at the other agents who were now just staring at him, waiting. He was cornered. His entire authority, built on bluster and fear, had just crumbled in less than 5 minutes. Fine, he shrieked, his voice cracking. You want a seat? Fine. He shoved David out of the way again and hammered at the keyboard. His hands were shaking so much he kept making typos. I'll put you on the plane, but you'll be in the last row, middle seat, right by the lavatory. How do you like that? He was still trying to win, still trying to have the last scrap of power. He slammed the print button. The thermal printer spat out a new boarding pass. He ripped it off and, rather than handing it to her, he threw it onto the podium counter in front of her. There, Group 9. You'll board last. Now get out of the way. Evelyn calmly picked up the boarding pass. She looked at it. Seat 42E. She tucked it into her passport. She looked up at Mark, and the professional calm was gone. In its place was something cold, something that made Mark Thompson's blood run cold. Mr. Thompson, she said, you have just committed a cardinal sin. It's not that you yelled at me. It's not that you were rude. It's that you fundamentally do not understand your job. You don't solve problems. You are the problem. You don't de-escalate. You are the escalation. And you did it all in front of your team and your customers. She paused, letting the words hang. You've made a terrible, terrible mistake. Is that a threat? Mark scoffed, though his voice was trembling. Are you going to write a complaint? Go ahead. It'll go right in the bin. I'm the manager here. A complaint, Evelyn said, almost to herself. Yes, I suppose that's one way to put it. She then turned, not to the jet bridge, but to the other agent, David, who was still pale. David, she said, and her voice was suddenly warm and kind. Thank you for your initial assistance. You were professional and courteous. David just nodded, speechless. When she turned back to Mark, the ice was back. Enjoy the rest of your shift, Mr. Thompson. And with that, she stepped aside, letting the now buzzing line of passengers shuffle past. She stood by the window, waiting for Group 9 to be called, her phone in her hand. She wasn't texting. She was writing, making notes. Every word, every action, every nuance. Mark Thompson watched her, his heart hammering with a toxic mix of rage and a new, terrible feeling. Dread. He didn't know why. He just knew that the woman in the gray sweater, the one he just tried to break, was not broken, and he had a sickening feeling that he was. The rest of the boarding process was a blur of frantic, angry energy from Mark and a funereal silence from his team. The passengers who had witnessed the scene filed past, many of them pointedly avoiding eye contact with him. Some gave Evelyn sympathetic glances. She simply stood, patient, waiting for her group. Mark, desperate to re-establish his dominance, barked at David. "Get on the jet bridge and start scanning. We're burning time. Susan, make the final call announcement. Let's go." He avoided looking in Evelyn's direction. He was a small king on a tiny throne, and he knew he had just shown his entire, pathetic court that he was a fraud. While he was busy shouting, a different kind of energy was approaching from behind. "Excuse me, pardon me. TAA staff, coming through." A woman in a sharp TAA-issued navy blue suit was practically running toward gate C-28. She was in her late 40s, with a clipboard clutched in one hand and a phone pressed to her ear. This was Sarah Jenkins, the regional director of operations for O'Hare. She was not a gate-level employee. She was corporate, big corporate. "Mark, thank God," she panted as she arrived at the podium, not noticing Evelyn standing 20 feet away. "I just got a text from London. Is she here? Has she checked in yet?" Mark was confused. "Who?" "We're trying to board, Sarah. We're already 50 minutes delayed." "Dr. Reed," Sarah said, her voice frantic. "Dr. Evelyn Reed. She's on this flight. The CEO's office just sent an all-station alert. She's our new EVP of Global Customer Experience. The EVP, Richard Sterling's big new hire. She's flying incognito to Heathrow. She's supposed to be on this flight. I was supposed to be here to meet her, but my car got a flat. Have you seen her? She's a black woman, mid-40s, passport name Evelyn Reed." Sarah was scanning the remaining passengers, her eyes darting around anxiously. Mark's world stopped. It wasn't a slow-dawning realization. It was a cold, brutal, instantaneous impact, like a car hitting a brick wall at 100 miles per hour. His vision tunneled. He heard a roaring in his ears. He thought of the ripped-up ticket. He thought of the words, "people like you." He thought of, "I'll call security." He thought of cheap ticket and scam. His head swiveled mechanically toward the woman in the gray sweater who was still standing by the window. He watched, as if in a nightmare, as Sarah Jenkins' eyes followed his. Sarah's face went from frantic to confused to utterly, completely, bone-chillingly horrified. "Oh, my God," Sarah whispered. She dropped her clipboard. It clattered loudly on the floor. "Dr. Reed," Sarah said, her voice a squeak. Evelyn, who had been watching this entire exchange, finally pushed herself off the wall and walked slowly toward the podium. The last few passengers in the queue, sensing the new chapter in this drama, stopped and stared. Evelyn walked right past the shell-shocked Mark and extended a hand to the regional director. "Sarah, I'm Evelyn Reed," she said, her voice calm and clear. "It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm afraid my incognito arrival has been somewhat compromised." Sarah Jenkins shook her hand, her own hand clammy and trembling. "Dr. Reed, I am so sorry. I was meant to be here to facilitate your—" Evelyn gave her a small, tight-lipped smile. "To facilitate? No, Sarah. This has been far more educational, as it is. You're the regional director of operations?" "Yes, ma'am," Sarah stammered. "Good," Evelyn said. "Then you're just the person I need to see." She turned her head just slightly to look at the man who was now the color of ash. "Mr. Thompson," Evelyn said. Mark flinched as if she had struck him. He couldn't speak. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked like a fish suffocating on a dock. "Mr. Thompson," Evelyn repeated, her voice acquiring a hard boardroom edge. "It seems we were introduced under false pretenses. I am Dr. Evelyn Reed. As of last Monday, I am the Executive Vice President of Global Customer Experience for Transatlantic Airlines, which means, technically, you work for me, or at least your entire division's performance reports to me. David, the young agent, looked like he was going to faint. The older agent, Susan, had her hands clapped over her mouth. The passengers who were still there were now all filming openly. This was better than any in-flight movie. I, Mark stammered. This was the only sound he could make. I didn't know. You didn't know, Evelyn said, finishing his sentence. That's the entire point, isn't it? You didn't know I was your boss, so you treated me… How? How would you describe the service you offered me today, Mr. Thompson? It was a misunderstanding, he blurted out, finding his voice. The system, the ticket, I was stressed. The delay, the system, Evelyn interrupted, was a problem I asked you to solve. You were the one who accused me of scamming. You were the one who used the phrase people like you. You were the one who ripped up my documentation and threatened to call security when I calmly asked for a resolution. Is that the new TAA training model for stressed employees? Public humiliation? Because I need to know, Mark. Is this what you train your team to do? No, of course not, Mark pleaded. The transformation was grotesque. The bellowing tyrant of 10 minutes ago was now a whimpering, terrified child. He was looking at her, his eyes wide, begging. Dr. Reed, please, I apologize. I was out of line. It's been a very hard day. Evelyn Reed held up one hand. He stopped talking, instantly. You are relieved of your duties for the remainder of this shift, Mark, she said, her voice flat. Hand your all-access badge to Sarah. What? Now? He gasped. I can't. The flight, Evelyn said, turning to Sarah, will be managed by Sarah, David, and Susan. Isn't that right, Sarah? Yes, Dr. Reed, absolutely, Sarah said, snapping into action, grateful to have an order to follow. But, Mark started, hand her your badge, Evelyn commanded. Shaking, his face a mask of utter and complete defeat, Mark Thompson unclipped his TAA badge and his airport security pass from his belt. His hands were trembling so badly he fumbled the handoff. The badges clattered to the floor. Sarah swooped down and picked them up, refusing to look at him. You will be at the O'Hare corporate office tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. sharp, Evelyn continued. My new assistant Jennifer will be arranging a meeting. We will have a very detailed conversation with human resources about your future with this company, or lack thereof. Am I clear? Yes, Dr. Reed, Mark whispered. He was a ghost. Good. Now please leave the gate area. You are, as you so eloquently put it, holding up the line. She used his own words against him like a dagger. Mark, stripped of his authority, his badge, and his dignity, gave one last, desperate look at Evelyn. He found no mercy there. He turned and in front of the passengers, his colleagues, and his regional director, he did the walk of shame, disappearing back into the terminal, a broken man. The passengers, who had been holding their collective breath, almost burst into applause. Evelyn turned to Sarah. Now, let's get these poor people on this plane. And Sarah? Yes, Dr. Reed. Find me a printout of every single customer complaint filed against this gate and against Mr. Thompson specifically for the last 3 years. Have it on my desk by the time I land in London. Yes, ma'am, Sarah said. Evelyn then looked at her boarding pass. 42E, she crumpled it in her hand. And Sarah, please find out why your system is auto-canceling confirmed tickets. That, she said with a slight ironic smile, was the original problem I was trying to solve. She then turned, walked down the jet bridge, and finally boarded the plane. The moment she was out of sight, the entire gate area erupted in a pandemonium of whispers, accusations, and frantic phone calls. The story was already spreading. The karma had just begun to strike. Evelyn Reed walked onto the Transatlantic Airlines 787 and was greeted by a flight attendant. Welcome aboard, the attendant, Lisa, chirped with a smile. Can I see your boarding pass? Evelyn, still operating on a low-boil adrenaline, simply showed her the crumpled 42E pass. Ah, 42E. All the way to the back and on your left. Right by the galley and the lavs, Lisa said, her smile not faltering, but also not offering any sort of sympathy. As Evelyn made her way down the aisle, she could feel the eyes of the other passengers on her. The ones from the gate, the witnesses, were whispering to their seatmates, pointing discreetly. That's her. Yelled at her, and you won't believe who she is. New VP. He's so fired. She finally reached 42E, the dreaded middle seat. A young college student was already in the window seat, headphones on, and a large man was overflowing from the aisle seat. This was the punishment seat Mark had assigned her. She sighed, caught the man's eye, and said, "Excuse me, I'm in the middle." The man huffed, clearly annoyed at having to stand up. "This is a joke," he muttered, grabbing the seat back to haul himself up. Evelyn squeezed past and buckled herself in. The seat was cramped, the upholstery was worn, and the air was already stale. She was the new executive vice president of global customer experience, and she was in the worst seat on the plane, exactly as her abuser had intended. "This is good data," she told herself, pulling out her notebook and pen. "This is the reality." Just as she was settling in, a new presence appeared in the aisle. It was Lisa, the flight attendant from the door, and she looked nervous. "Ma'am, Dr. Reed?" she whispered, leaning over the man in the aisle seat. "Yes," Evelyn said. We have a seat for you in first class. 1A. It's just become available. Please, let me take your bag." The man in the aisle seat's eyes went wide. The student by the window pulled one earbud out. Evelyn knew what this was. Sarah Jenkins had radioed the plane. The problem was being handled. "Thank you, Lisa," Evelyn said, her voice quiet but firm. "That's very kind, but I'm going to stay right here." Lisa was floored. "Ma'am, but it's 1A, it's a lie-flat pod." "I am aware," Evelyn said, giving her a small, reassuring smile. "But I've been assigned seat 42E. I want to experience the flight from seat 42E. I want to see what the service is like back here. I'm just another passenger. Please treat me as such." The flight attendant was completely bewildered. "But, Dr. Reed, are you sure?" "I am positive," Evelyn said, "but thank you for the offer. I appreciate it." Stunned, Lisa just nodded. "Okay, well, please let me know if you need anything at all." "I will." As Lisa retreated, the man in the aisle seat, who had heard every word, looked at Evelyn with a newfound, almost comical respect. He immediately sucked in his gut, trying to give her more space, and busied himself with the in-flight magazine, as if terrified of accidentally brushing her arm. For the next 7 hours, Evelyn got exactly what she'd asked for. She got the rushed, impersonal drink service, where the cart banged her knee. She got to smell the cycling vacuum of the lavatory door opening and closing, over and over. She experienced the 3 a.m. Chicago time, cabin lights being thrown on for a snack, a cold, rock-hard pretzel. But more importantly, she watched the flight attendants. They were not bad people. They were, like the gate agents, exhausted. They congregated in the back galley, and because she was right there, she heard everything. "I cannot believe that Mark Thompson did that," one attendant, a senior crew member named Angela, whispered angrily. "I've been flying out of O'Hare for 20 years, and that man has always been a pig. Always." "Did you hear what he said?" Lisa asked. "People like you. I mean, my God, can you be more racist?" "And she's just sitting there," another chimed in. "In 42E, I offered her 1A. "That's a power move," Angela said, a note of deep admiration in her voice. "She's not just a suit. She's seeing us. She's seeing this. She's sitting in the worst seat on the plane to prove a point. She's not hiding in the bubble." Evelyn pretended to be asleep, but she was absorbing it all. The crew didn't just hate Mark, they feared him. They traded stories. How he would write up flight attendants for being 1 minute late from their incoming flight. How he'd lose meal vouchers for crews stuck on delays. How he seemed to particularly target women, especially women of color. Remember when he made Maria, the new hire from Bogota, cry at the gate? Because her English wasn't fast enough for him. Oh God, yes. And Karen Price in HR just had a talk with him. Nothing ever happens to him. Evelyn's pen was moving under her blanket. Karen Price, HR. Look into this. By the time the plane began its descent into Heathrow, Evelyn had a dossier. She had a list of names, dates, and incidents. Mark Thompson wasn't just one bad apple. He was the symptom of a poisoned tree. He was a bully who had been protected, enabled, and allowed to fester by TAA's own corporate structure. When she'd set out on this trip, she thought she was hunting for procedural inefficiencies, broken systems, bad software. But the problem was human. It was cultural. And the rot was deep. As the plane taxied to the gate in London, her phone, which she'd connected to the slow, overpriced Wi-Fi, buzzed. It was an email from Sarah Jenkins. Subject, urgent. Files as requested, Re-M Thompson. Attached was a 40-page PDF. It was the complete 3-year complaint file for Mark Thompson. Evelyn's stomach clenched. She opened it. Even on her small phone screen, the pattern was damning. Manager was aggressive and unhelpful. Manager used derogatory language. Manager seemed to be enjoying my distress. Mark Thompson refused to help my disabled mother. Mr. Thompson laughed at me when I said I would file a complaint. Complaint after complaint. And after each one, a 2-sentence summary from HR. Addressed with manager. Case closed. Evelyn closed the file, her jaw tight. She looked out the window at the gray London morning. Her mission had just changed. She wasn't here to just fix transatlantic airlines. She was here to purge it. And she was going to start with Mark Thompson and every single person who had ever protected him. The TAA corporate headquarters near Heathrow was a sterile glass box that felt more like an insurance company than an airline. By the time Evelyn arrived, 9 a.m. London time, the story of the O'Hare incident had already ripped through the company's executive grapevine. Her new assistant, Jennifer, a sharp young woman who had been hired for her, met her at the door with a strong coffee. Dr. Reed, welcome. Your flight has been the talk of the internal network. I'm sure it has, Evelyn said, not breaking stride as she walked toward the executive wing. Get me CEO Richard Sterling, get me General Counsel, and get me the head of Global HR. In the boardroom, 10 minutes. Yes, ma'am, Jennifer said, already typing into her tablet. When Evelyn walked into the boardroom, the 3 of them were already there. Richard Sterling, the CEO, was a silver-haired man with a reputation for being ruthless. He was not smiling. Evelyn, he said, I hear you had a eventful first trip. You could say that, Richard, Evelyn said, setting her worn leather bag on the $50,000 mahogany table. I'm not here for small talk. I'm here to show you what you hired me to fix. She plugged her laptop into the main screen. The first thing she brought up was the 40-page PDF of Mark Thompson's complaint file. This, she said, is the 3-year history of one gate manager at one hub. 40 pages of customer abuse, racism, misogyny, and open hostility. All of it addressed and closed by our HR department. She clicked to the next slide. It was a list of names, the flight attendants from the galley. This, she said, is a list of employees who are terrified of their own manager, who have witnessed his abuse for years, and who have zero faith in our speak-up policy because they know it's a joke. They believe rightly that reporting him will only get them in trouble. Then she clicked to her final slide. It was a high-resolution still frame from one of the passenger videos that had already been sent to her by Sarah Jenkins. It was Mark's face, contorted in rage, his finger pointed. And this, she said, her voice dropping, is the face of transatlantic airlines. This is the man who represents our brand. This is the man who, yesterday, screamed at me, called me a scammer, tore up my ticket, and used a racial slur before finding out I was his boss. My question for this room is simple. How was this allowed to happen? The head of HR, a man named Robert Vance, immediately went on the defensive. Evelyn, this is an isolated incident. Mark Thompson is one bad apple. Stop, Evelyn said, holding up a hand. Robert, a man 20 years her senior, stopped mid-sentence. Do not, she said, insult my intelligence by calling him a bad apple. A bad apple is one person who behaves badly once. This is a pattern. This is a culture of neglect. This is a man who was enabled by your department, Robert. This is a rot. And I want to know who let him fester. Robert Vance shuffled his papers. There was a local HR partner, a Karen Price. She handled the O'Hare station. She, she seemed to believe in giving second chances. Counseling. Counseling, Evelyn scoffed. You don't counsel a predator. You remove him. Richard, she said, turning to the CEO, here is what is going to happen. Not what I propose, what is going to happen. She began to pace, the energy from the flight still coiled inside her. 1. Mark Thompson is in a meeting in Chicago right now. He is to be fired. For cause. No severance. Our general counsel will handle his wrongful termination suit, which he will file and which he will lose, because we have 20 witnesses and high-definition video. The general counsel nodded grimly. We can do that. 2. This Karen Price in HR, the enabler. I want her gone. Today. I will not have a single person in human resources who believes counseling is the answer to open bigotry. Her second chances have cost us millions in goodwill and exposed us to lawsuits. She's a liability we cannot afford. Robert Vance started to protest. She's a long-term employee, and her long-term employment ends today, Evelyn said, her voice final. You can handle that, or I will. Your choice. Richard Sterling watched this, a slow, grim smile spreading on his face. This was why he'd hired her. 3, Evelyn continued. I want a full, independent audit of the O'Hare station. Every manager, every supervisor. I want to see their complaint files. I want to see their performance reviews. I want to know who else Mark Thompson has been protecting and who else has been protecting him. We are cleaning house, starting in Chicago and then moving to Dallas, New York, and LA. That will be very expensive, Robert Vance murmured. It will be more expensive, Evelyn countered, when the video of your manager screaming a racial slur at me hits the press. And it will hit the press. We don't control it. The passengers who filmed it do. A heavy silence fell on the room. This is not a PR problem, gentlemen, Evelyn said. This is a cultural disease. Mark Thompson isn't the sickness. He's the symptom. The sickness is an arrogance, a complete lack of accountability that starts at the management level. We reward managers for on-time departures, not for customer retention. So Mark saw me, a black woman and coach with a ticket problem, as an obstacle to his on-time bonus, not as a customer, not as a human being. She walked back to the head of the table. I was hired to fix this. This is the fix. It will be bloody, it will be hard, and it starts today. Richard Sterling stood up. Good, do it all. Robert, give her whatever she needs. General counsel, prepare for the lawsuits. Evelyn, welcome to Transatlantic Airlines. Evelyn nodded. Thank you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a webinar to plan. A webinar? Robert asked, confused. Oh yes, Evelyn said, a cold fire in her eyes. A mandatory customer experience excellence webinar for every single station manager in North America. They all need to be reminded of what our values are, and I have the perfect case study to show them. 2 days later, Mark Thompson was a man adrift. He'd been fired just as Evelyn had promised. The 9 a.m. meeting hadn't been a discussion, it had been an execution. He and Karen Price were marched into separate rooms. A stony-faced lawyer and a senior HR exec he'd never seen before read him a statement. Violation of TAA's code of conduct, failure to perform duties, fostering a hostile environment. He was out. Security escorted him to his desk, let him grab his coffee mug and a photo of his kids, and then walked him out of the building. His badge was gone. His career was gone. He spent the next 48 hours in a fog of whiskey and self-pity. He called a lawyer who, after hearing the story and the fact that there was video, told him he'd take the case but that his chances were slim. You did what? To who? Mark, you're an idiot, the lawyer had said. On Friday morning, his TAA-issued laptop, which he still had, pinged. He had forgotten to disconnect it from his home Wi-Fi. A calendar reminder. Mandatory North American Managers Webinar, the TAA Future, Excellence in Action. Host, Dr. Evelyn Reed, EVP Global Customer Experience. Mark stared at it. A morbid, self-destructive curiosity took over. He was already fired. What could they do? He wanted to see her. He wanted to understand who had destroyed him. He clicked the link. His screen filled with the TAA logo. Then it switched to a high-definition video of Evelyn Reed. She was not in a boardroom. She was in a TAA training center, on a stage, speaking with an earpiece mic. She looked powerful, polished, the exact opposite of the woman in the gray sweater. "And I thank you all for joining," she was saying. The attendee counter showed 438. Every station manager, every regional director, every ops supervisor from Anchorage to Atlanta was on this call, including Sarah Jenkins, including David, the young agent who had been promoted to interim supervisor and required to attend. "We have a lot of work to do at TAA," Evelyn said, her voice projecting a smooth, confident authority. "For too long, we have operated under the illusion that our job is to move planes. It's not. Our job is to move people. And in that, we have been failing." Mark snorted. "Oh, here comes the corporate fluff." "I could show you PowerPoint slides," Evelyn continued. "I could give you charts about our declining satisfaction scores. But I've found that real-world case studies are always more effective. I want to show you a recent interaction at one of our hubs. This is a case study in failure, a case study in how one manager in under 5 minutes can destroy a customer's faith, terrify his own team, and expose this company to catastrophic liability." A cold dread, colder than anything he'd felt before, seized Mark. "Oh no," he whispered to his empty living room. "She wouldn't." "First," Evelyn said, "I want you to just listen. We've blurred the video and altered the voices for now. I want you to focus on the words." The screen went black, and an audio file began to play. Beep, boop, bloop. Audio. "I'm sorry, ma'am, your reservation isn't coming up." Audio. "David, what's the holdup?" Mark's blood turned to ice. It was his voice. Altered, but it was him. He listened, horrified, as the entire 5-minute interaction played out. He heard his own voice, digitized and monstrous, screaming, "You are holding up my entire flight. People like you always try to pull this. You are not getting on this plane." He heard the sound of paper ripping. When the audio ended, there was a dead silence. "Now," Evelyn's voice came back, "let's break that down." The passenger was calm. The system was the error. The manager, Mark, made a choice. He chose aggression over assistance. He chose ego over empathy. He chose humiliation over resolution. She walked across the stage. "Some of you might be thinking, this is a he said, she said situation. The passenger was probably being difficult. This is why," she said, "we are so fortunate to have video." "No, no, no, no," Mark breathed, his hand flying to his mouth. The video played. It wasn't the blurry passenger footage. This was the high-definition, crystal-clear CCTV footage from Gate C-28. It was a wide-angle shot, showing the whole scene. It showed Evelyn standing calmly. It showed Mark jabbing his finger, his face contorted. It showed him stalking over, snatching the paper, and ripping it. It showed him throwing it on the floor. And then it switched to a second video, a passenger's phone, now acquired by TAA's legal team. A close-up. It showed Mark's spittle flying as he screamed. It was brutal. It was undeniable. It was damning. The video feed switched back to Evelyn. "This was not an actor," she said, her voice ringing with cold fury. "This was not a stress test. This was Gate C-28 at O'Hare Tuesday. The manager was Mark Thompson, and the passenger was me." A collective audible gasp could be heard from the microphones of the 438 managers on the call. "Mr. Thompson is no longer with this company," Evelyn stated. "His HR partner, who received over a dozen complaints about him and did nothing, is also no longer with this company. As of today, we are launching a zero-tolerance policy for this behavior. Not a 3 strikes policy, not a counseling policy, a zero-tolerance policy. You yell at a customer, you threaten them, you use language that is racist, misogynistic, or abusive in any way, and you are gone. End of story." Mark Thompson was weeping, sobbing into his hands. This was not a firing. This was an execution. This was his name, his face, his worst moment, broadcast to his entire professional world as a what not to do. He was not just fired. He was a pariah. He was a case study. This, Evelyn said, is the old TAA. She gestured to the frozen image of Mark's screaming face. It's ugly, it's weak, it's unprofitable, and it ends today. Your job as managers is to find the Mark Thompsons in your own stations and root them out. Because if you don't, I promise you, I will. She ended the webinar. In his dark living room, Mark Thompson stared at his blank screen. His phone, which had been quiet, lit up. A text from a former colleague in Dallas. Holy dude, wow, I'm so sorry. Then another and another. That was the most brutal thing I've ever seen. Can't believe you did that, Mark. Don't ever contact me again. His career wasn't just over. It had been autopsied, dissected, and hung up for all the world to see. This was the hard karma. It wasn't just losing his job. It was losing his name, his reputation, and his entire professional identity in 1 hour-long mandatory webinar. The story of the case study webinar became a TAA legend overnight. It was the shot heard round the airline. The message was brutally, unequivocally clear. The old ways were dead. Mark Thompson's life unraveled. His lawsuit was, as predicted, thrown out of court in summary judgment. The video evidence was too absolute. He applied for jobs at other airlines. He never got a single call back. The world of airline operations is small. Everyone knew. Everyone had seen or heard about the webinar. He was untouchable. Within 6 months, he was selling cars at a suburban dealership. His TAA career a bitter, humiliating memory. But Evelyn Reed's work was just beginning. The O'Hare audit she'd ordered was a bloodbath. It turned out Mark Thompson was not an anomaly. He was just the most blatant example. 2 other station managers and 1 regional supervisor were terminated. Sarah Jenkins, the regional director, who had been frantic at the gate, was spared, but put on a strict performance improvement plan. Evelyn had recognized the fear in Sarah's eyes. She hadn't been a collaborator with Mark, just a coward. Evelyn could fix cowardice. She couldn't fix malice. Evelyn's first major initiative was the Courtesy and Care program. It was a 2-pronged attack. First, the stick. She implemented a red flag system. 3 credible customer complaints of the type Mark Thompson specialized in, aggression, discrimination, verbal abuse, would trigger an immediate high-level investigation. No more local HR smoothing things over. It went straight to Evelyn's new Customer Experience Integrity team. Second, the carrot. She knew that most employees weren't like Mark. They were like David, the young agent, burned out, underpaid, and given bad tools. She championed a massive new investment in gate agent software, a system that actually worked, one that empowered agents to rebook tickets and solve problems without needing a Mark to override them. Most importantly, she changed the bonus structure. Gate managers were no longer bonused just for on-time departures. A new metric was added, weighted at 50%, customer satisfaction scores, pulled from post-flight surveys tied directly to their gate. Suddenly, a manager yelling at a passenger wasn't just letting off steam. It was literally costing them their bonus. 6 months after the incident, Evelyn Reed flew the O'Hare to Heathrow route again. She didn't fly incognito this time. She booked her ticket as Dr. Evelyn Reed, EVP. When she arrived at gate C28, she saw a different world. The gate area was calm. The lighting was softer. They had even replaced the hard metal chairs. The interim supervisor, David, the young man who had tried to help her, was now the permanent gate manager. He saw her and a wide, genuine smile broke out on his face. "Dr. Reed," he said, walking over. "Welcome. It's an honor to have you." "David," she said, shaking his hand warmly. "It's good to see you. How are things here?" "Different," he said. "Really different. The new system, it's a dream. We can actually help people now. And the team, they're not scared anymore. It's better." "I'm glad to hear that, David," she said. A passenger, a man with a complicated multi-leg journey, came up to the podium, looking stressed. "Excuse me, I think my connection is too tight." David turned. "Sir, I'd be happy to look at that for you. Let's see what we can do." He smiled at Evelyn. "If you'll excuse me, doctor, I have a customer to help." Evelyn smiled and nodded. You do that, David. You do that. She boarded the plane and took her seat, this time in 1A. As she settled in, the senior flight attendant, Angela, the one she'd overheard in the galley all those months ago, came over. Dr. Reed, Angela said, her voice thick with emotion. I just wanted to thank you. I've been with this airline for 25 years, and I've never seen anything like what you did. You saved us. From men like him. Evelyn looked at her. I didn't do it for thanks, Angela. I did it because it was the right thing to do, and because it's good business. Now let's have a great flight. As the plane took off, Evelyn looked out the window at the Chicago skyline. The rot was gone. The foundation was new. And she, Dr. Evelyn Reed, had been the one to pour it. Karma isn't always a magical, mystical force. Sometimes karma is a 40-page complaint file. Sometimes it's a high-definition CCTV camera. And sometimes karma is a woman named Dr. Evelyn Reed, a woman who was pushed, insulted, and humiliated, but who had the power to turn that humiliation into a revolution. Mark Thompson didn't just get fired, he became a lesson in why you never ever judge a person by their clothes, their skin color, or their seat assignment. You never know who you're talking to. And more importantly, it shouldn't matter who you're talking to. Respect should be the default. This story is a powerful reminder that one person can make a difference, and that abusing your power, no matter how small, will always come back to haunt you. What did you think of Evelyn's ultimate karma on Mark? Was the webinar too much, or was it exactly what he deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love stories where the bully gets exactly what's coming to them, make sure you hit that like button, share this video with a friend, and subscribe for more true life drama and hard-hitting karma.